Okay, first video with the new microphone. I'm going to talk about Seth Rich and the DNC leaks, the events surrounding that, and what happened. I'm going to give the most complete picture I can. I'm trying not to insert my opinion. Rather, I'm going to stick to the facts as reported in the media and by independent investigators. So, here we go. At some time prior to June 2016, the email server of the Democratic National Committee was compromised. Emails released by DC Leaks and WikiLeaks showed clear bias within the DNC in favor of Hillary Clinton to be the nominee as early as March of 2015. Suggestions floated by various party members included ways to attack Bernie Sanders' religious views, how to discredit opposing media narratives, Hillary Clinton's relationships with Wall Street, misuse of Clinton Foundation funds, and a willingness to make an example of suspected leakers. In a 2016 article for The Observer, Michael Sinato states that Sanders was not treated as a viable candidate. Rather, the DNC actively worked against him to ensure Clinton's nomination, even preventing the Sanders campaign from accessing voter database files. Sinato also rightly points out that many people are beginning to see the voice of the people is often ignored by our leaders. The information contained in these emails indicated a lack of impartiality, which likely angered and alienated many Democrat Party loyalists, particularly the Bernie Sanders fans. One such disenfranchised individual, employed by the DNC, will become especially important in this story. What would become of DNC insiders who blew the whistle on such activity? As John Podesta stated in an email to Joel Benenson and Robbie Mook, there would be few objections to making an example of a suspected leaker, whether or not there was any real basis for it. This was following an embarrassing Washington Post article outlining the Clinton campaign's need for a branding strategy. In the article by Philip Rucker and Ann Guerin, Clinton is compared to Budweiser and other generic big-name corporate brands. Essentially, Clinton is a far cry from a craft beer, and the campaign desperately needs to rebrand her. What would be the consequences for leaking emails that could cost them the election? In June of 2016, the DNC disclosed to the public that its email server had been breached, and they had been secured as of June 11, 2016. Later that month, Guccifer 2.0 publicly advertised the availability of leaked DNC emails on DC Leaks. Users of online forums such as Reddit and 4chan began sifting through these emails and compiling information, which was then disseminated in memes on social media. Additional emails became available over the next few weeks from WikiLeaks, bringing the total to roughly 150,000 emails. Guccifer would later provide zip files he received from an unnamed source to an independent digital forensics team known as Forensicator. Analysis of the metadata contained therein yielded the following conclusions. The files were copied either directly from the server or from a computer connected to the local area network, or LAN. This conclusion was based on the timestamp which indicated the copy occurred on 5 July 2016 at an average transfer speed of 23 megabytes per second, and Eastern Standard Time settings were in force on the system. This information was ignored by both the media and the FBI, who instead relied on the conclusions of CrowdStrike. The DNC had refused FBI requests to access their servers to investigate the source of the leak. CrowdStrike, who had received $100 million from Google Capital in July of 2015, concluded that, you guessed it, Russia did it. It may be worth noting that Google CEO Eric Schmidt resigned within 24 hours of President Trump's executive order on human rights abuse and corruption. It's probably nothing. Seth Rich was the DNC data director of new voter registration. On 10 July 2016, 5 days after the files were copied, at 0419 in the morning, 300 steps from his front door, Rich was shot multiple times in the torso. Seth Rich was pronounced dead at 0557 in the morning. The cause of death, gunshot wounds to the torso was determined by the chief medical examiner to have been a homicide. He was still in possession of his personal effects, including his watch, wallet, necklace, and phone, despite the D.C. police statement within 24 hours of the shooting that this had been a robbery. Police immediately obtained a search warrant and seized his computers and phones. Rich had attended a televised UFC event that night at Lou's City Bar. Joe Capone, the bar's general manager, stated he had spoken to Rich that night. Capone even claimed he had offered Rich a cab, and later changed his story, claiming he was not at the bar that night, but on a family vacation. Reports indicate that no other staff members saw Rich that night. Private investigators state that none of the area's owners or managers have been approached by police requesting surveillance footage, save for the Flagler Market. The Flagler Market across the street from Seth's last seen location had cameras that would certainly have captured him when he left Lou's. This footage is said to have been taken by D.C. police. The chief of the D.C. police would resign 30 days after Rich's murder to take a 7-figure salary with the NFL. The Russian hacking narrative would begin later this same month, and within 48 hours of Rich's death, Hillary Clinton was using Rich's death to make the case for gun control. Then FBI head James Comey indicated that this time frame is when the surveillance began of candidate Trump's transition team. This is consistent with both the Schiff and Nunes memos detailing the FISA court application for surveillance warrants. 3 weeks after Rich's death, his roommate, Dov Friedman, would take over the full-time position left by Rich's passing. This week, we have seen the question of what happened to Seth Rich re-emerge in the collective consciousness. And the question remains, who killed Seth? Well-known individuals in social media and politics sphere, such as Julian Assange of WikiLeaks and Kim.com, formerly of the Pirate Bay, have alluded to Seth Rich as the leaker. Assange has not mentioned him by name as his policy, but .com has. But Assange did carefully select his words in an interview on a Dutch television program, Nieuwsuur, on August 9 of 2016. The interview can be found by searching, quote, Julian Assange on Seth Rich on YouTube. Here's an excerpt. Assange. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old, works for the DNC, was shot in the back, murdered just a few weeks ago, for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. The reporter. That was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it? Assange. No, there's no finding. So, I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things happening like that. Reporter. Was he one of your sources? Assange. We don't comment on who our sources are. Seth Rich would have had the ability and opportunity to access the DNC servers directly. As a Bernie Sanders supporter, he would have had the motive to do so following the DNC's rigging of the primary against Sanders. Hillary Clinton spent $1.2 billion of other people's money on the 2016 presidential race. This does not include contributions to the Clinton Foundation or the Clinton Global Initiative that were made during this time. It would seem, judging by the collapse in funding for these organizations following the election, that those making contributions expected something in return that she can no longer deliver. So I ask, what would you kill for?